Man, what a pleasure it is to welcome on one of the best quarterbacks of this era, of course, Matt Schaub. He did it on the field, but you're not done with professional football, Matt. As our readers found out at Go Long, I guess it was about a month ago, you laid out your plans. If you're going to run the NFLPA, what really matters when you get to that negotiating table? I guess in a word, leverage. But man, it is awesome to have you here on the Go Long Pod to dig into this a little bit more, Matt. How's life? How's everything going on your end?
Life is good. Again, Tyler, appreciate you having me on and for posting that letter article on your site. Life is good. Just dad of five kids and just all the activities and school and everything that goes into that. But really, just still connected to the game in a big way. And like you had mentioned with the NFLPA, just what an incredible opportunity for the NFLPA and players at large with all that's gone on over the last couple of years. I think there's never been a more heightened awareness of the union and what's taken place, and owners and the players and the two sides, especially given this day and age in NFL football. So many players are becoming more aware of the issues and what's taking place in player leadership, and that's a good thing. And so it's an incredible opportunity to hold each other accountable, hold leaders accountable, and to steer the ship of the NFLPA in the direction the players want.
I've been pretty unabashedly pro player. The more I cover this game, I mean, you guys are the ones out there sacrificing your bodies, your brains, laying it on the line week in and week out. And the thing is, though, you get to that negotiating table, and the NFL, I mean, they're loaded up. They've got their plans. Probably as we're talking about this right now, they know how they're going to attack the next CBA. And, the players, the ones who make the game great, the reason that we're tuning in every weekend, Sunday, Monday, Thursday, is there a plan, right? Is there leadership? That's kind of been the problem here, right? There's just been a lack of direction, a lack of leadership. Obviously, some of the headlines over the offseason were insane with the last leader of the union was doing. But to you, what is the diagnosis? What's the problem when it comes to the NFLPA and kind of laying the ground for what should be done right now in advance of this all?
Well, I think just for some context and some background, you hit the nail on the head. The owners are constantly thinking about negotiations. And then the next CBA, it doesn't expire for 5 more years. But they have been thinking since 2020 about that negotiation. They're always thinking the long game. And players, for better or worse, we have our blinders on. We are thinking about the next thing right in front of our faces because NFL careers, we all know, it's about 3 years average length. So players are thinking the next game, the next season, the next contract, if they're so willing and able to achieve that. Like they are not inherently thinking about contract negotiations for the CBA because a lot of them might not see the end of the CBA. And that's the problem in the Discord that we have when you have two 10-year agreements back to back and what they mean. So many players are apathetic to what's actually taking place in the CBA. They are just thinking about what's right in front of their faces. And I get it. I was one of those guys. But owners, they think the long game. They're always thinking bigger. They're thinking, how can they get more leverage? That is the number one thing when you get to CBAs and contract negotiations for players and teams, right? When you're just talking about strictly your playing contract, it's about leverage. It's about who has it and who doesn't. And the owners have had it for the last 17 years, and there's no change in sight unless someone's willing to stand up and say enough's enough. And it needs to be a former player. It's time to get back to the Gene Upshaw days prior to 2008 with his tragic passing, and have player-led leadership. Someone that knows the locker room, knows how every player feels and what they're going through. And someone like myself, playing 17 years, I was drafted to the Atlanta Falcons. I was a young backup to Mike Vick, learning the game, trying to find my way, to being traded, to being a franchise quarterback, to making Pro Bowls, to getting injured, being on injured reserve. So many players have to deal with that and what that means, and filing for workers' comp, to getting cut, to being a free agent, to a veteran backup, being a mentor to young players. Not many players when they come into the league face the realization that this is a business. Like when you're going through your off season training camp and you come in one day and a guy you've been eating with, living with in the dorms, to playing, to being out in the field with, their locker's empty and they're on the street. And then you see them the next week and they're still out of work. Like that's the harsh reality of this game. And owners just seem to just harness the leverage way more than players. And the only piece that we really have to hold over the owners' heads is our play and us being on the field or not. And so that is the big key when you talk about the next CBA. If you really want to get leverage as players, you have to be willing to set up a system to where you can play. If the owners don't want to come to the table in good faith and negotiate with you as the players and have an honest discussion about what the issues really are, you have to be willing as players to come together and have a way to earn your money and play if the owners don't want to come to the table and they want to sit there and just lock us out like they did in 2011.
So let's dive right into it then, because it did blow my mind. I hadn't even really thought of it in these terms because it's nothing new. Like we've seen disputes before in the NFL, and we've seen players, scabs, whatever you want to call them, take the field, and it's gotten contentious. But I don't want to give anything away. I'll let you put it in your words, Matt. But what could the players do right now to bring all of this to action?
Right. Like you said, one thing, strikes don't work. We've seen that. We saw that play out in the 80s, and owners are willing to bring in replacement players. They'll find a way to get theirs, but strikes to try to get 2,000 plus players on the same page, moving in the same direction in that manner, and forfeit getting their game checks, getting their paychecks, being able to take care of their families. That's a harsh reality. And that's something that we've seen doesn't work, and it won't work. And so we have to find an ulterior means. And just going to a negotiation and demanding certain things or asking for certain things, that's not going to resonate with owners. They're not just going to say, oh, okay, yes, players, we're going to give you, we're not going to take an 18th game. They're not just willing to kowtow to the players. You have to have leverage. And so for us, we need to have an alternative to the negotiated agreement that we could come to through CBA. And how are we going to do that? Well, that's where you rally all the players, especially the big name players in the locker rooms that have influence on the locker rooms at large, to come together and understand that there is a way we can do this. Yes, this is our circumstance. If we do nothing, it's just going to continue. The owners are going to take back a larger piece of the pie. They're going to give us an 18th game with very little in return, just like they did with the 17th game, 5 years ago. So what do? And you have to get players on the same page. You have to speak to them. You have to talk in their language and lay it out in plain terms to where, guys, this is where the owners are, and it's only going to get worse for us. Even though I get it, contracts are where they are, especially the big name contracts. Those are the ones you always read about. But you got to look at the minimum salary players, which that's 60% of your locker rooms across the NFL. That's your rank and file. Those are the guys that really drive the game. They're the guys you see doing the dirty work in practice, doing the dirty work in games. They might not get their name in the headlines, but those are the guys that really make the game go. People could spend hundreds and thousands of dollars to come to games. You think they come to watch Jerry Jones do his press conferences and Robert Kraft shake hands before the game, or Roger Goodell, who's the highest paid employee in the entire NFL at $60+ million a year? Like, no, they come to see the players. They pay all that money to come see Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and these guys. Like, players need to realize their power and what they can do if we can come together in solidarity. And there is a way to do that. And it's never been a bigger time where there's even the private equity firms that are now being instituted into football, right, and they're allowing that money to come in. There's billions of dollars in those companies. The streaming platforms and the TV contracts. Look at all the avenues, and the NFL knows this, and that's why they're swallowing up as many as they can. When you look at ESPN, CBS, Fox, ESPN, Amazon, you have some YouTube and Netflix coming. Like, they see all this landscape, and they're trying to get a little bit of each of them, so that there's no way to break away as players to find those platforms. Well, there's plenty out there, and there's a way to do it. If you look at, I know I mentioned in the article, look at Live Golf. And I know that has been a contentious issue in PGA life and in golf life, but look what they did to the PGA Tour with them having to raise their purses and their payouts to players in tournaments. And LeBron James even talked about making his own league. So there's a way to do it. There's tons of influence and money out there, and players need to be able to harness that and understand like there's a lot of work to be done to get there, and there's a lot of urgency that players need to have because I know we talked about the CBA doesn't expire for 5 more years, but let's just look at it with the current situation in the NFLPA. Owners are going to want to try to speed that up, and there's been rumblings of trying to get a new CBA negotiated in the next 2 to even 3 years because there is an opt out in the media deals the NFL has in 2029. So, what better way to line up that negotiation with labor peace with a new CBA negotiated in the next few years to be able to go to those negotiations and say, we have another 10-year deal. Well, if that's the case, that number is going to be astronomical in the media deal. And yeah, that helps players out. But what's going to come of that CBA and the current leadership? There's not a lot of time to prepare for those negotiations. So time is of the essence when you talk about preparation for those negotiations. And it's got to start now. And you got to have time as an executive director to go to the teams, go to players, to lay out the plan, to get them on the side, to get them all marching in one drumbeat. And if you look at it, if a new executive director isn't hired till next spring, that cuts down another 6 months of that time frame. And so time is of the essence if you're the players.
So perfectly said. And I definitely want everybody to make a point. We'll link it here in the show notes to read what you and Jason Cole kind of lay out here at Go Along. But I'll read a quick excerpt here because this just really drives it home.
Mm-hmm.
So this is right from Matt. Whether or not I become the next executive director, we need to be focused on the most important goal in any negotiation, creating leverage. I hear players and members of the NFLPA executive committee talk about the need to battle the owners on their terms. I can tell you right now that the only thing the owners and the NFL executives worry about is their leverage compared to ours. They have spent the past 20 years making sure they have it and are doing everything to keep it. To them, words don't matter, clever offers don't matter, demands don't matter, only leverage matters. And then here are the numbers that you laid out, Matt. It's crazy. We're not talking about nickels and dimes here. In the past 2 CBA negotiations, we have given away staggering assets. In 2011, we went from getting 57.5% after giving them the first $1 billion for expenses to getting roughly 47.5% of all the money now, which you can find in Article 12 of the current CBA, with total national and local football revenues at approximately $23 billion in 2024, based on projected figures. Our share under the previous system would have gotten roughly $12.3 billion. Instead, we got roughly $10.9 billion. To translate that simply, we gave the owners $1.4 billion last year alone from what used to be our share. Over the course of the 2011 CBA and the extension done in 2020, we will have lost roughly $25 billion, according to projections. That is staggering. I mean, that's unbelievable. And so if you don't have direction, if you don't have a plan, if you're just playing patty cake right now and this is how you lose literally billions of dollars, right? You got to have a plan.
You do. And it's not hard to think that in the next 3 to 4 years, this is going to be $30 billion a year business. And when you get to the new CBA and you get those new media deals, it's easy to assume, for argument's sake, the next deal is another 10-year deal, which I'm not in favor for, but let's just go by the last 2. We're looking at 500 to possibly $800 billion in league revenue every year. Now, how much of that is going to go to players and how much of the owner is going to keep on their side? And if things go the way they've been trending, that number is only going to grow. And, it's just players need to realize what that money can do. We're talking guaranteed contracts. We're talking raised minimum salaries, which I can go into that and the percentage increase, and it's far under what it should be, given the rise in the salary cap. And you look at lifetime healthcare right now. If you're a vested player, after the midway point, early in your 3rd year, you're vested. You get 5 years of continuing coverage, which is great. I'm not saying that's not good, but it should be better, especially with what players deal with from a physicality standpoint, injuries long term, especially with the additional 17th game, and if we're going to go there, possible 18th game. with the impact on guys' bodies. Like lifetime healthcare has long been something that has been whispered about in players into between players and in locker rooms. Well, that's a reality, and it's something that I did research on back in 2023 prior to the last election. Um, and it's always been talked about like it was not possible, like it was way too expensive. Well, I think that was just being dismissive and that no one really wanted to spend that because it's a real possibility for players, especially with money like you just mentioned from that article. Like it's a reality and players need to really gravitate to that because that's something 100% of us as players, there's guys in the locker room that are the top end of the pay scale to the, like we talked about, minimum pay, right? Guys that'll play 12 years, guys that'll play 4 years. One thing we're all going to be is retired, and we're all going to be in a position that I'm in right now, and so many other of my, teammates and former colleagues, they're in that same boat, and we need to be able to help the end of the game as well as while we're playing.
So what could you guys put into action here? And you lead the story with it, you come back to it later, but there's that potential scene of Patrick Mahomes, TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, Josh Allen, Cam Hayward, Lamar Jackson, a bunch of stars just
Mm-hmm.
visiting Saudi Arabia. I mean, imagine Roger Goodell and the owners if they see that, if they see that the players are realistically piecing together a plan to play football because they can't stop you guys from playing football. That kind of went through the courts, right? Like they kind of flirted with that idea of
Right.
you can't stop players from playing the sport. So if you, I guess the point is that you're making here, Matt, is you can't just wait till the 11th hour, scribble it on a napkin and say, oh, we'll go start our own league. You have to start doing stuff right now. So what could that look like theoretically if players did just create their own damn league, if it got to that point? And why is it important to
Well,
maybe spend money to make that plan, to sell that as a real plan?
Well, it can't just be talk, right? Talk has to lead to action. We can't just sit here and talk about it. It has to be something that you're willing to put into action. Like you said, it is going to cost money to enact some of these things, to get the ball rolling, to start the negotiations, the talks between different parties. And, the Saudi Arabia example, it was a way to just grab people's attention, especially with what's transpired in golf, but also just their interest in sports. Like there's tons of other, we talked about private equity, we talked about the streaming platforms. There's so much of a possibility there for players, but you can't just talk about it. Like we just said earlier when we started, owners aren't going to just react to talk, but they'll react to actions, and they'll realize the importance of coming in good faith and fixing what has been the shortcomings of players in these negotiations. And so that is just something that players have to understand the importance, that we have to come together, and we have to put forward action and start this process, start finding ways to get the money to front the league so then we can establish places to play. We can, get coaches to come, former executives. There's plenty of them out there that would love to be able to participate in this type of structure, and we will make the rules. We'll figure out the type of game that we want to play and on our terms. It'll just be like a Green Bay Packers that are, owned by the citizens, by the fans, and it'll be publicly owned. And, you just have a bunch of those out there, and the players will be able to play the game on their terms.
This is what Matt writes at the story. It's very long. Again, encourage everybody to check it out. You wrote, when Roger Goodell and the owners threaten to lock the doors to their business and threaten us with lost wages, we have to look them straight in the eye and say the following: go ahead. If we can do that, our investment of several $100 million will pay off in billions. For example, if we somehow got just 1 point back in the next negotiation, that would be worth $8 billion. Or if the NFL really tries to play hardball, maybe we can end up owning the whole thing. I mean, really, you put yourself in a position of somebody with a streaming service or somebody who's just running a Fortune 500 company, has a lot of money and sees this happening. Not just the Saudis, but they do have a lot of
Yeah,
money out there internationally. Are
sure.
you gonna like funnel your millions and billions toward the Jerry Joneses, the Robert Krafts, the owners, or do you realize that people are gambling, punching in the fantasy football lineups to start Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, Bijan Robinson, all these studs? So it, I mean, just from an as an outsider in the media, it would be it would be entertaining. But I tend to think that the money will follow the people who actually make this game. But you got to put the work in now. So I guess my question for you then, Matt,
Yes.
is where do things stand? Like you want to run the NFLPA. You've made that clear here at Go Long. Is there any action? Have you gotten a sense for where things are going? And I know the players are in the middle of a season. They might not be
Right.
necessarily thinking about this right now, but they should.
Right. I guess the timing of when the article hit your site, guys were in training camp. They had had some time to digest it. I did have talked to some that have gone through it. Now it is long. So I get it. And guys were tired. They were in probably the worst, hardest physically moment of their season. But right now, I get where players are at. And for guys to be aware, it's hard for them to really process what's going on outside of the locker room and off the field. But there will be a time for that, and there's hopefully going to be a process laid out for this. But my big thing with the article with Jason and with your kindness to be able to put it up on your site is to just bring awareness to the plan that I had formulated back a couple years ago when there was a process and they went through to elect their executive director at the time. But I never really got a chance to put out the plan and raise awareness around the ideas. I never got a chance to talk in front of the executive committee or players at large, the reps, as a group, and say this is the plan. I had small conversations, but the big thing is let's just lay it out there and put it out there for everyone to chew on and put it through the meat grinder
Yeah.
and see what happens. And that's the only way we as players are gonna have that big grand long-term plan is to wake everyone up. And I think that the past 6 months has done that to some extent, but guys need to realize the bigger game at play, all the while they're still playing during the season. And so I think that's the challenge. And that's something that, we really got to get in front of players and help them to understand that there's something bigger than just what's going on right in front of you. But you have to be able to
Um,
compartmentalize those things.
you know what I loved about this too, Matt, is like you did cover every conceivable angle of this all. It's like you kind of knew what some of our readers would be thinking, and like, oh, like I'm a fan who cheers for
Yeah.
the Bills or the Packers or the Steelers or the Ravens or okay, and I root for this team. So this again, this is what you wrote at the site. I'm sure there are a lot of fans who have read this, and if they have gotten this far, they are probably scoffing at what we perceive as a problem. Uh, I mean, I could go on and on here, but you say, suffice to say, the history of professional football will not go away. The passion for the game will not go away. The culture that the NFL has built will continue. In fact, it might be better in a player-run league. If you want to know the greatest benefit that fans will have if the players run the game, it's simple. The tickets will be cheaper, a lot cheaper. The food and drinks will be cheaper. Even the streaming services that some of you get will probably be cheaper. Why? Because you won't be paying the owners anymore. So it's not like you're saying, all right, we're going to wipe out the NFL and change this forever. You
No.
know, the meat and potatoes are there, and there are some benefits. So I guess I want to give you the opportunity, Matt, to speak to those fans who might be listening, saying, what in the hell's going on here? This is too crazy.
Well, and I completely get it. I understand the fans' perspective, and I understand you have the players and owners, but you have this other outlet, the fans, right? That basically pay for the game. They pay on both sides. So I get the crazy notion that these ideas and these thoughts have, and what that means to fans. And I understand a fan's perspective looks at what players make already, and are like, you already get paid too much. You guys are complaining, and you make hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. Well, then on the other side, you have owners that get paid billions, and then we see how they treat the fans or talk to them through the media and treat players. Well, there's a way for fans to even be more integrated into the game in this model, and you laid it out like things are going to be cheaper. Why wouldn't they be? You're going to have more access potentially to players. You're going to be more part of the game, especially if it goes to a more publicly owned model. You're going to be more invested. But the game's still the game. The eyeballs are going to follow the players. Like we talked about earlier, if
Yeah.
you have all the players wherever they're going to play, people are going to go and watch. Football is the greatest game in existence, and it's the greatest, media magnet. I mean, you're talking 80, I think last year, 80 of the top 100 broadcasted shows on television were NFL football games. I think the year before that, it was like 90 or 92 of them. And that's been the trend. And so the eyeballs are going to go where the players are. And so for fans, like, we're not talking about just getting rid of the game of football. We're just talking about playing it on our terms as players and giving you the same product.
And I think that all the fans, or most all of the fans, would agree. Just, if you put this plan together, you get to the table, you give the players a bigger slice of that pie, right? At the end of the day, that's kind of what everybody wants, the same thing. Everybody wants NFL games. You just kind of want it to be a little modernized and to get paid what you believe players deserve at the end of the day. And that's something I think that all fans could get on board with, because they are the ones wearing the jerseys, punching those fantasy football lines, like we said. So, but it's just about not just going to the table willy nilly without a plan. You need a plan that's concrete here.
You got to have a plan, and you got to have a plan in action, and you got to
Mhm.
have something laid out, or else it's just you're just at a poker game bluffing. And the owners, they're going to see right through that. You got to be able to go there and know that, okay, if you don't want to negotiate in good faith, you don't want to come to terms and have an honest conversation about where the game of football is, and what's right and what's fair for what players are putting themselves through physically, then we're going to go over here and we're go ahead, lock us out. We're going to go play. And I think that's the number one thing that'll, get them to the table and have an honest conversation, and just not continue to scrape more and more of those percentage points back over to their side
Yeah.
from what used to be players' money. And, it's going to total billions and billions of dollars.
Hey, we've got like 10 minutes or so. Like you mentioned, you're watching the game closely today. You had the seasons with Atlanta, Houston, obviously. This is a hard turn, but I'd be remiss. I want to ask you about first those Falcons. I think you do some radio in Atlanta. Is that right? So you're watching this team pretty closely.
Yeah, I do, and just living here in Atlanta, and had finished my last 5 years of my career with the organization, and I still have teammates that are on the team, and I was
Huh?
connected to the organization 2 years ago on their staff, and so obviously being the hometown team, I follow them closely. I know a bunch of the coaches. I do some weekly radio for the local radio affiliate weekly. Also do some radio for Virginia football, my alma mater, which I got to give them a shout out after beating Florida State on
Yeah.
Friday night.
Jeez.
But
I've never
and the
seen
most
a
epic,
storming of a field like that. It looked like they were
yes.
going to war.
Fortunately, everyone got out. Fortunately, everyone got out of there safe and sound. But man, that was just an epic night of football. So yeah, there's just been some things that I've been doing to just stay connected to the game and talking football. And so it's a game that gave so much to me, and it means so much to me after 2 decades in it. So I just want to stay in the mix of the game.
Man, I have loved Michael Penix. I feel like
Yeah.
he's got star potential. The leadership, the intangibles, all that stuff is off the charts. So like when he had that poor game at Carolina, and my God, he's 6 starts into a career, and you're hearing the calls for Kirk Cousins to go back in. I mean, it was pretty loud. Not just in Atlanta, all over the country. It was, I guess, a little refreshing to see him light it up against Washington. Where do you think his career is going to go, Matt?
Yeah, it was great to see him come out with the performance and the team in general. Because not
Yeah.
just last week against Carolina wasn't just on him. It was the whole team. Just and you have games like that. You hope it's not a blowout to a divisional opponent like that and a shutout. But sometimes you go out and you lay an egg, and it's a reality check for you as a football team. But the Falcons are super talented, and it starts with the young quarterback in Michael Penix. And I got people with his maturity level and his unflappable nature. He comes off as a 5 or 6 year vet, but people have to remember that, like you just said, he's in his sixth start, and people want to write him off, and it's just not the case. You got to give guys time to develop. Like the sense of urgency these days from fans and organizations and colleges, for that matter, is like, you got to win now. We can't wait. We can't develop guys. Well, it takes time to learn playing the quarterback position in the NFL, and he's really off to a good start. And he's super talented, like you mentioned, can throw it all over the field, and he's got a lot of talent around him. So take advantage of the Bijan Robinsons and Drake London, Kyle Pitts, those guys. I mean, this team and that player, sky's the limit for them.
Is there another team that's kind of caught your eye 4 games into this season, Matt?
Oh wow. I mean, there's some surprises, but not many. I mean, I think teams are where they we thought they would be, to be honest with you. The Eagles, obviously, they're super strong. The Bucks, they had a great matchup the other day. The Bucks are talented, and they went toe to toe with the Eagles in the NFC there, despite without Mike Evans on the field, which I think
Yeah,
everyone thought without him on the field that would have been a one-sided game, and it was for half of it. And then Baker Mayfield really rallied the troops there. Um, but I mean, Buffalo. There's no surprise there in the AFC. Kansas City, I think the big surprise is the Baltimore Ravens.
yeah,
I think the big thing for them is injuries right now, and especially on the defensive side of the football. But the question mark with Lamar Jackson and his hamstring. But they're 1-3. What does that look like? And you got the Steelers who are 3-1, and looking like they're the kings of the AFC North right now. So, but there's a lot of football to be played. We're only 4 games into it, and
yeah.
so we'll see what transpires. But you see some of the teams you thought were going to be good dealing with injuries. That's the X factor when you go through an NFL season. It's a war of attrition, and who can avoid the injury bug the most.
And you know what? I watch like the Shanahan and the McVay and LaFleur, like all McDaniel, that these coaches that have kind of
Yeah,
schematically taken the game a new direction. I think of you because you were kind of at the front end of that all with Shanahan when he was the OC in Houston, right? Like that's really when
yeah,
he was starting to experiment and scheme guys open. What was it like to be a part of something that was brand new at that time? I'd imagine he is
yeah.
a mad scientist. He's pretty hard on his coaches. We've heard some stories. He'll grind you down. This personality is one of a kind, hard edge to him. But as a quarterback, I'd imagine it was pretty cool and fun.
It really was good memory by you, just with the lineage and where he's come from. But yeah, so when I got to Houston in 2007, Gary Kubiak was the head coach, coming from that Denver system with Mike Shanahan, right? And
Right.
the zone run scheme, the play action, the bootlegs, a lot of those action passes. And Kyle was the quarterback coach, and so it was cool for me to just get to know him as a young coach. I mean, we're the same age. So we had a great relationship, and then he gets lifted to be the OC and quarterback coach. And, it was still Gary Kubiak's offense, but you could start to see the ideas that Kyle and I would talk about, and mainly from his perspective. And then I would co sign them when we just draw them up on the board. And you could start to see those being sprinkled in. So whatever was taking place after hours up in the coaches' offices, you could see Gary Kubiak adopting a lot of the play action, a lot of the route combinations that were foreign to him, that were new. But man, they were revolutionary for
Yeah.
offensive football. And then you see him go with his dad to Washington, and that's where he had the Sean McVay, and he took Matt LaFleur with him there, who was also on our Houston staff. You saw Mike McDaniels go with him, and so you saw these coaches go to Washington, and then you see them all get head coaching jobs within the next couple of years, just from their experience with Kyle. I mean, he is a mad scientist. He is someone that's super creative, and you see that in Sean McVay taking it even step further. And I think that's just offense and football in general, with the window dressing that offensive coordinators are putting on plays, whether it's formation, shifts, motions, just trying to distract defenders and get their eyes out of position. And then they still just run their basic stuff. But it's how you present it to the defense. And that's just the fascinating and the art to what these guys are doing.
Because my point is we're not just talking to a former player who's got some idea. It's like you did it at the highest level. You led the NFL in passing in 2009, 4,770 yards, 29 touchdowns, and then 2012. That's when you guys went 12-4. You threw for
Mm-hmm.
4,000 yards. Then I mean, you were one of the best multi Pro Bowl participant there. So this guy knows what he's talking about, and I think that should be a takeaway here, like the direction of the game from a player's side of it. I mean, it's crazy we have to say this out loud. It shouldn't be a lawyer. It shouldn't be an attorney. It should be a player, somebody who gets it, who's been in that room, played at a high level, knows what it takes. And I think a quarterback, the most important position in sports, yeah, it makes too
Well,
much sense.
Well, and that's you hit the nail on the head. As a former quarterback, you deal with every position group. You do it. You relate, and you have to communicate and talk to every player on the team. You have to know how they think, how they operate, what motivates them. You're almost like a psychologist in the locker room in a way. But you deal with everything that goes on as the leader and the quarterback. And when you think about the NFLPA, having a former player as the leader of it, we can go out and find the best lawyers we can. We can go out and find the best financial people to give us help, the best negotiators to help us. But it's all about the plan, and it's all about bringing players together and get them on the same page. And what better way to do that than someone that has to relate and deal and work with every player in the locker room and get them all moving in the same direction to win football games. Well, now we're just expanding that locker room and expanding that huddle to every player in the league. And we can go out and find the best people that to advise us and to help us with some of the intricacies of what we're trying to do.
And you're doing it with 5 kids, which, man, I don't know how I should be taking notes and asking you questions about fatherhood. We got 3. When you told me you had 5, I'm like, oh my, how does he do it? I mean, I know we got to sign off here, but how in the hell do you manage
Well,
all of this? Playing football. Now you want to run for the NFL. When you got 5 kiddos. I'm not sure how old they are, but I imagine it's across the whole spectrum here.
well, let's just say God bless my wife. She's a rock star, and our oldest is 15, and our youngest is almost 7. So we do have twins in there. So we doubled up our second go around. We went from 1 to 3. But right now, we're in a big time zone defense. And at about 2:30 every day, it's like, all right, I'm going this direction. I'm going this direction. I'll see you back at like 8 o'clock at night or dinner. What are we going to have? Well, we'll just figure it out on our own and go from there. But it's exciting. It's a lot of fun, but it's all credit to my wife.
Hey, we got to let you run. This was phenomenal, Matt. Thank you so much for announcing your candidacy right here at Go Long. Right here is Matt Schaub. He's going to run to lead the NFLPA. You heard a few of his ideas here. I encourage everybody out there, do yourself a favor, read the story that's linked right here on the post, and you'll learn a lot. It blew my mind, and I'm sure it blew the minds of everybody who read. Thanks so much, Matt.
Hey, Tyler, thanks for having me on, and look forward to doing it again sometime.